High stakes poker players are just like you. They want to win money and they make big mistakes. Take a look, for example, at this 5, 10, 25 game at the Vic in London. What kind of mistakes these players make? Have a look.
This first hand was played early in the night, so the players were still a bit cautious, but Thomas opens pocket nines under the gun, obviously a fine raise, and then we have Andreas, a player with the same name as me, who has king 10 suited, and he 3-bets pretty big in the cutoff to 4x, and Thomas makes the call here, which I think is a bit loose with pocket nines, but they are quite deep, so not the worst, but maybe he knew that he would flop a set here, middle set, and Andreas should c-bet this board here. However, he should make it quite small with his entire range. He goes almost half pot here. Thomas has an easy call. He could of course raise here, but then he would fold out all the bluffs, so he's hoping to keep the bluffs in here, and he does indeed, because Andreas has only king high, but he now slows down on this turn, and on the river Thomas now has a decision. I think he should go small here because his opponent had slowed down on the turn, so he could try to induce here with a small bet or trying to get called by a pocket pair under the ace, but he goes fairly big here and he gets the snap fold from Andreas. So, but yeah, most likely he couldn't have gotten any more money out of him. This next hand is quite interesting because both players involved are doing something that's not very GTO approved here. So first of all, we have William raising Queen Jack offsuit under the gun in a full ring game. That's way too loose. And now we have Ravi in the small blind, cold calling with pocket sevens. I don't think that's really a mistake here, but he could get blown off his hand by one of the blinds, but maybe he knew that they were rather on the passive side. And here we have this flop of ace king king, and now if you're William and you raised under the gun, got called in the small blind, you have to c-bet this board. Instead he just checks behind, and now the ace pairs and it goes check check once again, and even on the river it goes check check. He wins here with queen high because Ravi's pair is counterfeit, but I don't quite understand why he didn't take a shot at this pot. Some loose action in this next hand as well here. So here we have Josh raising in the +1 position with Jack 9 suited, and now we have Andreas in the hijack cold calling with ace 7 suited when there are 5 players to act behind him, and then William wakes up with ace king offsuit in the big blind, a mandatory 3-bet, but he only goes about 3x here against the under the gun raise and a cold caller. Jack 9 gets out of the way, but Andreas calls with a7. Yes, he is dominated, but still William should have made this one bigger, and Andreas should absolutely have folded this one. On this flop here, 8-4-4, I also think that William had an easy c-bet here. Now Andreas picks up a gut shot here, and he decides to check again. So very passive games here. Check behind from William, and on the river it goes check check as well, and William wins with his ace king. I just don't understand the passivity of these players here at this early time of the game. Andreas is shaping up to become the loosest player at the table. Here he opens 9-8 offsuit in the cutoff. I don't have to tell you that this is way too loose, and he gets 2 callers, pocket 5s in the small blind and 10-9 suited in the third blind. He now flops an open-ended straight draw and he goes for the c-bet, which I wouldn't have done. It's quite likely that at least one of the players connects with the board here, and indeed the third blind has the 10. But now an instant service here on the turn. Andreas has the straight and he bets again. I think this one is great now, because if the third blind has either a king or a 10 or some sort of a draw, it's unlikely that he will get him to fold. And William does indeed have the 10, and he has a straight draw, albeit not the best. Here now, the club comes on the river, so the backdoor straight draw. William checks again, and Andreas now has a decision, and he will just check behind here. And I think now he is actually seeing monsters under the cupboard, because I think this should have been an easy value bet here on the river. Next hand doesn't involve Andreas for a change. We have Ravi here on the button with King 10 offsuit, and you can raise this one, but it's not as automatic in a 3-blind game as it would be in a 2-blind game. And we have Cyrus with King Queen suited in the big blind, so that is a 3-bet. I'm happy with that. And this call from Ravi is way too loose here pre-flop with King 10 off, even in position. I would just ditch this hand, but it does flop top pair here. And now Cyrus has two options, to either bet big or to check. Betting small is not really much of an option here in the big blind when 3-betting, but instead you will see he goes for the small bet here. Easy call for Ravi, and on this turn I think it's time to slow down, if not give up, for Cyrus, and this is exactly what he does here. He checks, and also good check by Ravi. And on this jack river here, if I were Cyrus, I would consider potentially betting again, because you most likely won't win, and after you made it so small on the flop, you could bet again. If he had made it big, as GTO would suggest, then I would be okay with just checking here, but he just bets. Just checks, and Ravi now bets out, which I don't understand either. I mean, what do you want to get called by here? By an ace high or something like that? I really don't like this. This is a check behind all day by Ravi here. He will only get called by better hands here. This next hand is very interesting because it has a few mistakes in it that you will see all the time from recreational players, especially in live poker. So we have Luke on the button with 7-6 off, and he raises, and that already is way too loose for my taste. In a 3-blind game this is an absolute no-no. Even in a 2-blind game this would be a bit thin. Then we have Cyrus calling with Queen Jack in the small blind. Also I would 3-bet that. Same for William, who has the same hand bizarrely in the second blind, and then in the third blind 4-3 suited. That's fine. And now we have a monotone flop here, Jack 5-4. Everyone's got a piece of it, and look at this now. Luke bets 175 into 300. This is way too big against 3 players, and yes, he's drawing to a straight, but there is already a flush out there, so I don't think that's a great bet there. Cyrus and William both call with top pair, and now Luke has the option to fire again, and you will see that he will do just that. And he is drawing to what? To a straight when there is a flush, or to a 7-high 4 flush? I don't know why he's doing that. Obviously it's just a bluff, but he's not drawing to anything good here, and he is quite unlikely to fold out really better hands, although Cyrus is going away with his top pair now. And now you'll have the next mistake from William here. What do you think you should do with Queen Jack on this board? I think a call is fine, but what he does is he just jams. So when he jams here, is it for value or is it a bluff? Because I can't really tell. Like, I think you could get an overpair to fold here, but I don't think you can get a flush to fold, and I don't think you get called by what? By pocket tens with the spade or something like that? Well, in the first place, Luke should never have bet that one, and he finds the fold here, obviously, but really poorly played from quite a few players in this hand.
If you're enjoying this video, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to me. Thanks.
And we're just going to continue with a theme of silly mistakes. Tobias raises pocket queens under the gun. Obviously that's not a mistake yet, but then David cold calls in the cutoff with ace-8 suited. I mean, it's not absolutely terrible, but with 4 players behind you that could all squeeze, I don't really like it, but everyone else folds, so we go heads up to a flop. And the flop is not great for Tobias. Ace, king, both on there, a 3 as well, and he decides to c-bet very small. I would probably not have done that against a passive player like David, but fair enough. And David, what does he do with his ace, no kicker? He just raises here. Obviously snap fold for Tobias, and just ask yourself, what do you accomplish if you raise a hand like ace-8 on that board? No one will fold to your raise who has a better hand, and you will most likely not get a weaker hand to call. As you can see, Tobias snap folded his pocket queens. In this last hand we're moving far away from theory, as you will see. So we have a few folds here, nothing out of the ordinary, and then Andreas wakes up with king 4 suited in the hijack, an amazing hand that you have to raise. Obviously I'm being sarcastic here. And then Tobias, pumped from his queen's hand before, has jack 5 suited on the button, and he decides to 3-bet. Snap call for Andreas, both with these monsters going on to the flop. And what does the flop bring? Well, a piece for everyone. Tobias has top pair and Andreas has bottom pair. Now, what should you do? Andreas obviously checks to the aggressor, and Tobias should now either go big or check on this board. What he does is to go small, thus basically telegraphing his hand that he has a decent hand, but not an amazing one. And Andreas has an easy call here with bottom pair once he gets to that point. Now we have the ace here. Who does this one help? Well, normally if Tobias had made it big, then I would say that this would help him, because Andreas shouldn't float with ace high, but because he made it so small, he might float, so the card is a bit neutral. They both check, and here we are now on the river. Flush completing card, but it's the backdoor flush, and 2 pair for Tobias. Andreas leads out small here, 225 into just under 900, and I don't like this bet at all. Yes, he's got a piece of the board and he wants to block bet, but what do you get called by here? King Queen? Would such a hand call? You can't fold out any better hand, and you definitely can't get called by worse. And now Tobias, with his 2 pair, he raises, which I think is fine because he shouldn't be afraid of the flush, and Andreas only made it small there. Yes, I know Andreas is an aggressive opponent, and it'll be tricky if you get re-raised here in your Tobias, but I still think he should raise here, so I think that one's fine. But I don't understand Andreas's play at all here. Why does he block bet on the river where he has no chance of getting called by a weaker hand or fold out a better hand? And now he's tanking. He is seriously considering to call here with his bluff catcher, but it would really have to be a complete bluff, like something that doesn't connect with the board at all, because like what would that be? Yeah, again, king, queen 10, something like that. I mean, maybe they have some sort of a dynamic between them and I don't know, and Andreas might know that Tobias is capable of bluffing and also of 3-betting super light, as he did here with jack 5 suited, but Tobias looks really comfortable here. He smiles, he laughs, so I just think Andreas has a lost cause here, but he can't let go of his hand just yet. He's looking, he's smiling himself now and debating what to do, and in the end he just lets go, and this is the first good decision in this hand that I've seen from him.
And for even more outrageous mistakes made by high-stakes players, have a look at this video.